Okay, one of the things that I was discussing with Ashley, and that applies to everyone, and I'll be giving you the group database which I've set up, and I'll have you try to connect to that. You have to get this exactly in here, and in Ashley's case, she just had one extra piece. What was that? Well, she basically had this right at the end. So these are the things where what we are trying to do in MIS is a strange combination of very different things. On the one hand, you have to be able to interact with clients, end users, to do your business user analysis. So, and then you come up with these high-level class diagrams where, so if you're trying to understand what is the user wanting and how do I model it, and then we get into very specifics like this. So it's a very diverse set of skills. Some people are very good at the big picture, others at logical reasoning, others at detail-oriented stuff. And what are we requiring here? Pretty much everything, right? You have to have across-the-board skills. So that's one of the reasons that we've had higher placement. If you are considered a good MIS candidate, you've had higher placement than computer science and in the business college, right? I think the only other major that's comparable, but not on, like, if you're among the top students in accounting and finance, they get some comparable jobs with salaries, but none of the other majors. So this is one of the reasons that you have to sort of go across the board with paying attention. So this is one of those areas. So that's one thing. The second is, if you have any compilation or build errors, you cannot you cannot do your migration. So you have to make sure you're building it. And there were a few questions that some of you had, and at the end of last class I was discussing this about, where is the, so once you have your migration set up, you want to start using the seed method to start migrating over your sort of your sample data. And so this is where we will get some data into our tables. I'm using this to discuss. So whatever is our application domain classes, in this case colleges. The others, I don't want to call them application domain. When I say application domain, it's basically whatever I have in my class diagram that pertains directly to my application. What category would you place these classes? These are, we discussed last time, built-in classes into MVC, these 5, which have been translated for us using the entity framework into these 5 tables. So if I don't classify these as necessarily domain tables, like domain application, what would you categorize these as? What role do they play? What is the main purpose? What do they serve? Anyone? Okay, I'll open this ASP.NET users. What do you see inside of it, the columns? What do they tell you? Just look at these email, password, security stamp. What are they indicating to you? Lockout, two-factor enabled.
For user accounts?
They're for user accounts and for security authentication authorization. So that's the purpose of it. So Microsoft calls this the identity model. So basically, they in several other environments like Ruby on Rails, they create these for you. Why do you think they built it in?
Most people wanted it, and it was taken forever to do it.
Exactly. So anything that's potentially common requirements across applications, now like to libraries such as Microsoft's and Ruby on Rails provides it. But let's say you're working for a company, Novelist, or where are you working?
I was on the no contract.
Okay, so let's say you work on 2 different projects or 3 over a period of time, and you start seeing that the same requirements are coming, like you're finding it happening again and again. What would you do? Make it into a library. You can create a class library, and then, so just like Microsoft has done, we can create our own library. Otherwise, you're going to be duplicating code, and anytime you start duplicating, we've discussed this in the context of data, what's the main problem with whenever you duplicate data, or in this case, logic? Yeah. Redundancy is not the problem in itself. What's the problem? Redundancy is the result, but we can sort of live with redundancy because data, especially storage, has become very inexpensive. So what does redundancy lead to? Yeah.
Unreliable data.
Okay, unreliable data, inconsistent data, but here we are talking about logic. What is the problem with having the same logic duplicated in 3 different applications? Let's say, I think Novelist does this. Many of their contracts are government contracts, right? I think they, you know, it worked on it. Okay. I spoke with Dean Kloss. He's been there for 1 year now. But he was saying something. So some of these government contracts, there are the stipulations, requirements are common, and of course, like right now, the previous administration had all these environmental restrictions or regulations, which supposedly are being changed in the next whatever few months. So if something changes, the logic applies to multiple of these applications. So if it's going to change, then you basically have to go into each of them to make the change. If you have it in one place, you can consistently, well, you go and change it. This is basically the object-oriented way of thinking. Anytime you start repeating anything, whether it's data or logic, you want to encapsulate it into one module and then reuse it. Okay. So that's what's being done by Microsoft here, and you can use this identity model across multiple applications. So how many of you were here at WVU when you had to log in, when you had multiple usernames, passwords to log into different applications? So you know, you've been here only when you're just using one username, password. Okay. They made this transition, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember the date. And it was a huge, like multi-million-dollar effort. And right here, you have one place where you can have all of the identities stored, and then have it used across applications. So that's again a benefit if you're thinking of employees or people in a particular organization using multiple authentication means. You can use this as your common source. Okay, let me get back to where we were, end of last class. So the main thing, obviously, for you to make sure you are here, and actually, are you able to go back and forth or no? Okay. Okay. When we added college, we just put this in, and this is what tells it that it has to add this migration. When we say migration, basically, we had an initial migration which was based entirely off of the identity classes, which we didn't create at all, which was from Microsoft. And we did that as a first migration. And then we added in the college class. So basically, anytime you add in a class into your model, what you want to do is we created our the basis of our class. What's the next step that we did? If we want to migrate, what is required? If you don't do this, it won't happen. Yeah? No, if you don't do this, the migration will not happen. Let's see if TJ picked it up.
Update the database.
Yeah, even before you do that, there's one other thing. That's if you, again, this is a very small step, but if you miss it, and this is where the details come in. Yeah, Megan?
Do you have the configuration here?
Inside configuration, where is that? Okay, well, which one are you saying? This one here?
We have to add that.
For the data to go over. So if you want any data to pop, you want, like, for example, for us, we said we wanted the college table to have some sample data. So if you want to have this sample data, you have to use the seed method. But this is even before. If you want to do, like if I had done this migration, if I had added in a migration without this step, I would have ended up with an empty up and down method. Yeah, let's see.
Was it the minus target column 0?
That's in the migration process. This is not quite. So if you look at the steps, let me open this up. So all of you are mentioning either, or many of you, let me open this up. Okay, so these are the migration steps with the initial migration, enable migrations is done only once. And other than Megan's response, which had to do with the code in configuration, all the others have been talking about these steps. Okay? But this piece that I'm talking about is not with the migrations, it's pre-migration. Okay, let me ask this up. In the identity model, what do you do?
At the bottom, we put the public set college.
Yeah, this is crucial. It's a simple step, setting the property. If you don't do it, and if you don't see like if you open up, so if you were to open up this migration here, added college, if you don't see anything here, if this is empty, it most likely means that you didn't set this connection. So that's the first place I would look for. The other concept that a few students seem to not be clear about was how we were calling populate colleges. Now, what differentiates, like, if I just did this, it would be an error. Why would it be an error? And I think Krista pointed it out, but somebody else, maybe Chris, why is this an error?
Because we need to know where the populated college is coming from, so you specify a class.
Okay, in object orientation, every method belongs to a class.
Yeah.
Okay, and the only way you can call a method by itself without referencing a class, and Krista pointed out last class, what did she say? The only time you can call it without referencing an object or a class. Yeah.
Is it a static?
No. There's only one case there. Okay, actually. If it's in the same class, that's the only way you can call a method without prefixing it. So we have to prefix it with one of two things. We can either prefix it with a class, or we need to prefix it with an object of the class. So, and this is the conceptual piece. So this is not just a detail missing, because you have to understand the difference here between an object, a method that belongs to an object, and a method that belongs to a class. And so how do we distinguish whether this method belongs to a class or an object? Okay, Liz? What is it? Because there's a lot of stuff you can have in front of them. Which one? What tells you that this method belongs to either the class or the... Let's see if TJ picked it up.
Static.
Okay, what does static tell you?
That is a class method and not an object method.
Okay, it belongs to the class, not the object. So what is the implication here? And there are two things. One is, when do you decide to make a method a class method? This is the conceptual or higher level design choice. So how many of you know how to reason between using a method as being an instance or object method versus making it into a class method? So in this case, what is the reason for making this a class method? Only Eric? Anyone else? Okay, Eric.
Well, I was just saying, logically, if you're changing something about an object, it would have to be a class method.
When you're changing something about an object, so let's say we are modifying there were several, I guess if you have this system over 10, 15, 20 years, there used to be, I think even WVU was called something else. I forget its original name was, you can Google and see. But let's say the university or college name, several colleges are now changing to becoming universities, for example. So you want to change the college's name. Would you make it a class method? So an edit method for an object, this is a class method.
That would be an object method.
Because
Changing an existing object.
yeah, it applies only to an object, one object, so you would make it an object method. So why would you make this a class method.
It's performing operations that have to be done when the class is initialized, right?
Not quite. It's very simple. What do you see inside here? Yeah, TJ?
Objects being created, so that's why you make the class methods, creating college objects.
Yeah, we are creating multiple of these objects. So if I call this on an object, what object would I apply it on? This is where the college objects are being created. So this method doesn't apply to one single college object. It applies essentially to multiple of them. So if it applies to multiple of them, I cannot have it associated with a single object, so I go with the class. So the rule of thumb, the underlying reasoning is, if there are multiple objects associated or being dealt with inside of that method, then choose the design as a static or class method. So it's applying to a single object, then make it an object method. So that's the conceptual piece. Now that's the high-level design piece, and the next is the sort of the conceptual part of how you call this. And this was again something what is my configuration? Okay. So when you call this, you have two options, as we said. One is either to have an object, which means you have to create an instance of this object, or just reference it off of the class itself. And in this case, it's obviously off of the class. So that's something, again, a conceptual piece. While it showed up as a syntax error, you have to be able to reason through it logically and make the conceptual connections. Okay, and if it doesn't compile, then you cannot do a migration. So if you set this up, the next piece is, let's add the next class, and I'm going to see if you can do most of the adding yourself. So we have college here. Which of these two is the simpler class? Conference or college conference? It's the conference, because that's the simpler one, which is not referencing. This one references both. So, okay, so what we'll do right now is just add this in as a new class. The other thing that we need to start looking at is testing to see if it's working or not. We can do a simple test. We'll do a very simple test so that we sort of follow some of the agile logic here. Okay, so before we go and put that in, let's just go into tests. You created a test project. Currently there is one folder called controllers. You can do tests through the controllers, but it's not something that I particularly like or recommend. It's harder to test through the controller. But if you open up your Test Explorer, you'll see there are 3 tests that are not run. And if all of these tests are in this home controller test. So if you go in there, you'll see a test class with 3 test methods, and these are the basic built-in methods that are built into the controller. So when we started it up, it created 3 controllers, the first of which was the home controller. And you can see it really doesn't do anything much, but it's all that these tests are doing is saying that the first one is returning some view, so the result is not null. Then it checks for the message that's being sent in the about, and then the contact not being not null. They're not particularly useful. You can use them as templates for checking. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll just add in a unit test for our college class. So we'll call it college test. So instead of going inside controller, I'm just going to say, let's see, this is a controller's test. So if we're going to follow this format, we might want to create a models folder and then put our models test inside of that. So right-click on the test project, add a folder. We just call it models to indicate that this is where we are testing our model classes. And then right-click on models, add unit test. So it brings in a class called unit test 1, and we don't want it to be unit test 1. Instead, we want it to be college test. So right-click on the file name and rename it to college test. Okay. And then it prompts you to rename it, which you want to do. Okay. So we have this college test class, and we want to test what we want to do at this point is just to see if our colleges are actually getting populated. Now, so basically what we want to do is to check from the database whether we are getting the same. So if we get the data from the database, what are we expecting? How many rows would we expect? 2. So if it has gone to the database, we are expecting a total of 2 rows, and so we'll compare it against this. So we'll do a very simple test, just compare the number of rows that have been populated on the database against, and we know that we populated it using this method. So we will use that approach, and you can see where is the controller test. The three pieces to it: arrange, act, and assert. So let's try to do that. So this is a test of the college. So let's see, what's a meaningful name for this? Yeah.
Are you testing the populated colleges specifically?
We are not really testing populated colleges as much as we are testing to see if the college table is being populated or having data in it. So we could call it a populate. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this populate college test. Okay. So let's arrange. What's the first step? Act and assert. So obviously they've used this to try to have you remember the AAA mnemonic to remember the testing process. So what we want to do is to set up, so we want to have an expected and an actual. Okay. So what is the expected here? What are we expecting? You can make it very, very simple, or if you want to sort of automate it, so you can say something like, this is going to be a list of college objects. You can see it doesn't recognize it. What do you think we need to do? you need to introduce the generic collection as well as the reference to the models directory. So this is the expected expected list or expected list of colleges. And how can I get this expected list? You could just say college dot populate colleges. This gives me the list that I know that I have it inside of this MVC world. Now, how do I know that this has actually occurred on the database? I would have to get the data from the database, right? So let's see how we can do that. What did we say references the database? What references the database? It's on the MVC or C# side, what represents the database is this application DB context class. And that's why we set this connection to colleges inside of that class, this property. So application DB context is what we will use. Application DB context. It's going to represent a database, so I'll call this object database. And anytime you're creating an object of a class, what do you need to do? What's the conceptual answer to this? Somebody else, TJ has answered several of the conceptual questions. I want somebody else here. You have to construct an initial object, so how do you do that? Using the... Yeah. Okay, so we construct this database object, and then using this database object, we are going to say database dot, and this is where the connections to the table start to occur. We're seeing database dot colleges dot, let's see if we can, define an assembly not reference, so add reference to the entity framework. Okay, so what's happening here is the entity framework is, if you look at it, and these are all the small pieces, the details you have to then connect in. If you look at the references under MVC app, you will see where is their entity framework? Okay, right here. And what did I say the entity framework does? Logan?
On the translate from the relational world to the object-oriented C# side.
Yeah, it does the translation both ways. So it does it from relational to object-oriented and object-oriented to relational. So that framework has to be there for this translation to occur, and you can see that it's complaining, saying that it's not understanding yet. So one simple way that we can do it is to go to tools. And last class, I think Chris told us how to get to the package manager console, but there's another option under that, which is the manage NuGet packages. And this is Microsoft's way of actually accessing packages that we need to incorporate into a project, including open source projects. class. So if you open up that NuGet solution, you'll see a graphical rather than the console window. And you can see that the entity framework has been actually added in, but it has been added into one of the projects, and we have two projects. So let's see. Okay, which project has it been added in, and what tells you it's been added in? Megan?
The top one, because it has the version number.
Yeah, this tells you that it's been added into the web app. We need to add it into our test as well. So I'm going to check that. You don't check the other one, you just need to check the tests and install it. Okay. You have to accept the license, and then it should go through. And you can see it actually it runs it in the scripting window, but we are doing it through the graphical interface. You can also go to the package manager console and then type it in from there. Has anyone worked a lot in the Unix environment? So TJ, you've said. So maybe I know that some people who work with the Unix environment, you do a lot of command line work, and so for them, they sometimes prefer using this. And TJ, why might you sometimes prefer using this over using a graphical interface?
Just like the GUI interface sometimes can regulate the long-term. Command line wise, it's just, the command that gets what you want.
The other thing is you can specify extra parameters. So in the graphical interface, you usually are restricted to the simplest option. Here you can add in other criteria in the parameter list. So if you get used to this, you might want to do it through the command line. But this is an easy way of finding whatever packages. Okay, coming back to this. So now it's no longer complaining about the lack of it. So if you want to check that it's there, where would you go? And these are again small things, but you need to, if you're having errors, as I said, many times we learn best by actually making and fixing errors. Easier.
Check references under the test.
Yeah, I'll go under this and check to see that it is now there. Okay, so once you have that, okay, so I want to find or get all of the colleges. So let's see, the get method. Okay, I think if I just say database.colleges, I think it will get me the list of colleges. So what I'll do is this, and if it doesn't work, we'll try to fix this. Okay, the list of colleges, this is, so anytime, if you remember from our previous exploration in that Fibonacci application, what did we do? We had an expected, and we had to compare it against what for our test? Actual. So I'm going to call this actual list of colleges, and I'm going to assign whatever I get from the database to this actual list. But it's still complaining, and if you can see it says can't implicitly convert from the DB set to this list. So there is a converter called to list, and it's complaining because it's not having, let's see, so potential fixes, we need to use system.link. Link, so the to list is coming from the system.link library. So I wanted to convert to a list of what? Of college objects. So it's a method, so to list college objects. Okay. So now I have the actual and, well, actually, this is, if I actually want to do it in this arrange and act, what was it that I just did? Does this come under arrange? Yeah.
How do you get so you get the actual list of colleges?
Yeah, I'm getting the actual list of colleges. So if I want to go strictly by what is here, I need to separate this out. So I would have to say I'll declare this here, but I won't act on it. So the acting itself is here, and I will, let's see if this accepts that. Okay. So now we have, what is this? Complaining, simplify name, to list, college. Okay. So anyways, so this is the action of going to the database, getting the data back from the database. And what's the assertion? What's the simplest assertion we can make? We said we are, yeah. I said dot R equal, okay. What are we checking for equality? Okay. Now, if you compare the expected with the actual list, there's some part that's going to fail, and I'll just show you expected actual list. Okay, so now if I run this, even though you expect it to be equal, let me build the solution. It should show up, the test that I created should show up after it builds. And if I run this, it will fail. There's a very obvious reason for it failing, and a second non-obvious reason. So if I run all, this last one should come back. Not one test. Okay, it has failed. Let's see why it failed. Okay, I said our equal failed, and it gives some reason here. Okay, there's two reasons that this comparison is failing. The second one, we'll get into it next class. It's a little more involved, but the first one you should be able to tell me. And these are the kinds of things that if I'm evaluating you in the interview, I'll ask you. So when we were populating changes, this is the expected list is coming through this populated changes, right? Okay. So what are the attributes that this is populating? What are the properties or attributes of this class that are getting populated using populate colleges? I don't know if you noticed it. Okay, Ashley. Okay, college name and college ID. How many of you agree with that? Megan? You agree with it? Well, what Ashley mentioned is, with this populate colleges, we are populating the college ID and the college name. Okay, Logan?
Isn't college ID being auto-generated, and we are just populating the college name?
Okay, so over here we are just giving the college name. Where is the college ID coming from? The database. We did it when we wrote the script. What did we say? We set it as a identity column. That's one of the reasons I took you into SQL Server previous to our getting into this application. It's auto-generated. So what does that mean? Now tell me what it means for this test. Why is that one of the reasons this is failing? Yeah.
The actual list of colleges from the database after.
So how will that be different?
Well, it sort of equally checks the values and configured it differently because the one only had names.
Yeah, it's a very simple reasoning. Which one has only name? Expected has only the name, while the actual has both the name and the ID. So we cannot do a comparison of the lists themselves. What will be a test that should pass? There should be a simpler test. What is a simpler test? Yeah.
I found one that says our name, but I don't know that.
Well, what is something simpler? And this is where you have to figure out, even if you're working in a company, like you want to do a simple check before you go into any complex one. So there's a very simple test you can do. You may not know whether the actual data itself is the same, but at the very least, what can you check for? Yeah.
Let's say values in rows that they return.
No. It's a very much simpler test. Yeah.
Like size of the
Yeah, essentially number of rows, right? That's the simplest test you can have. So you can just say expected list, and then you can also have two others where I'll just put it here as int expected number of rows of colleges, and then another integer actual number of colleges. Okay, where do I get the expected number of colleges from? This is equal to what? Anytime you have a list or collection, there should usually be, let's see if there is, this is the nice thing about IntelliSense. What's the property or method I need to use? You should be able to find it even if you don't have any other documentation. Yeah, Megan? Count. So this counts the number of rows in the list. And let's see, why is it complaining? Cannot implicitly convert int to, okay, what mistake did I make here? Yeah.
You did list of colleges instead of number.
Yeah. So those kinds of errors you should be able to detect and correct as Eric just did. Okay, so that's the expected. What's the actual? Do the same one. Okay. Why is it complaining now? Okay, I'll ask Chris, why is it complaining? Okay, I see TJ's hand up. Anyone else? It's a very simple conceptual, logical mistake. At this point, and I lost TJ since he was the only one who had his hand up. What's the reason for this?
Actually, I thought I had it, but I didn't.
Okay, let's see.
Do you want me to initialize the actual colleges or you said you could do
I didn't initialize it. I just declared it. If I actually do create the object, I don't think it will complain. So if I did this here, it doesn't complain. The reason being, it can now look inside a list object because it actually exists. But if I don't initialize it or create an object, then I don't have anything until I come to this stuff. Right? So nothing exists. The list has just been declared. So it's basically saying you're asking me to count something that doesn't exist. Isn't all this very logical? If you think through it, if you were being asked, give me the number of items in this list, and there's no such list, what would you say? I don't have any number to give back to you. That's exactly what the system is saying. Okay, so what's the assertion here? What are we expecting to be equal? Instead of the list, it is going to be, yeah. Okay, so now if you were to run all of these tests, okay, what's it expected to? Actual 0. Okay, so why did my actual come back as 0? Okay, whenever you have, and this is where you have to, what did we do whenever we had some type of error like this? Go to the fail test, put a breakpoint, okay, and then I'm going to stop it right at, let's see, I'll stop it at these 2 points. I'll use this right click here, debug selected test. And I'm going to stop it just after it goes to the database, comes back. So let's see, actual list of colleges came back without any colleges. So let's see why did this. So I'm going to go inside where it says database. And inside of the database, there is another database property. This is the database object I created. And then I'm drilling down. This is something you have to get into the habit of doing. So if you ask me any questions, the first thing I'll ask is, did you put breakpoints to debug? And then I drill down. And it says connection string, data source, local DB, default connection, and it does it is it going to our database? The answer is no, it's not going to our database. So where is it going? It's going to some localized database, and which is built into Visual Studio, and it's not finding anything. So instead, what we have to do is, what did we do on our MVC web app? I'll close the reference. What did we do to tell the application where to go to find our database? Where did we specify that? Where is the database connection string? Yeah.
Well, last time I went into the web configurator.
Yeah, web.config. So go into web.config, you'll see the connection established, connection string. Go to your test project. In a test project, do you see a web.config? Is there any file called web.config? And the answer is no. Okay, so because it's not a web application, it's just an application, so instead it's called app.config. So open up app.config, and what do you see inside there? Do you see any connection string? And what type of file is this? It's a XML document. Okay, so there's nothing inside of your connection string. We wanted to go to the same database, so what's the simplest solution? Okay, copy and paste your, going to stop the debugging, go into web config, and then I'm going to add, there's already connection string, so I'm going to add this element add name until provide a name. So open, close tag, whatever is inside connection string, I'm going to put it inside of connection string here. Okay. So once you have done that, let's see. So this should now take us to the database instead of some non-existent local one. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Okay, and now it finally passes. Okay, so how many of you have passing tests? 2 hands up, 3. Okay. What about the others? Are you in the process, or are you failing the test? Well, you better have it passing, otherwise winners it. You don't want to be doing this on March 28th or whenever we have you won't have your passing test figuratively and literally. Okay, so anyways, how many now have it passing? Krista, do you have it passing? Okay. I thought this machine was the slowest of the lot, so so Chris, is it no? Is it not yet finished running, or it's not? It's failing. Okay. Do you know how to figure it out? What's that? Okay. Well, we didn't add that much. So you'll have to fix that piece. If it's not working, you'll have do the debugging and fix the. You now know how to look inside it for the connection string, right? So you'll have to sort of drill down into the layers. Okay, it's actually, yeah. Okay, so let's look at, we have about 10 minutes left, creating the second class. which is the conference class. Okay, so just to get a sense of whether you are understanding this process, I want you to start this. So where would you go to start it? Yeah.
Models.
Okay, go into models. Remember now we have two models, one in the test project, the other in the MVC app, but go inside models in the app and add your new class. You want to call it conference. Okay. So once you've added that in, and if you want to avoid confusion, sometimes I do this. This curly brace is the end of the namespace, and this is the end of the class. As you start creating more methods, sometimes it becomes more confusing where it ends. And then this is what you're going to do on your project as well, and I want you to, I know that, well, this is one of the things I wanted to just verify. Let's see, we have about 8 minutes or so to go. The part I wanted to make sure is, Stella had logged in, and I need to try to get back into Visual Studio. Where's the sign on? First sign on. Okay, in the meantime, you can try to keep working on creating the conference class, and I'm going to have you do that as your homework exercise, so you can start the process now. I'm just going to go to Team Services. I know that the group 3 I could access. So that's Logan and TJ. Just going to log in to make sure that I can see the others. What's that? You got it right. Okay. So what was the problem?
I accidentally refactored. I kept using the wrong words instead of actual number of girls in colleges, so I refactored and only did half of them.
Okay. Okay. So fall 2017 MIS group. I see 3 and 4 is, that's Chris, right?
Send each other out.
What's that?
You can send invites to each other. You couldn't find you.
Okay, let's. You can just keep, I think what Chris did, you just typed it in, right? And then,
Type the email you gave on
Yeah.
the night, send the email and show up.
you can just type this in for the new user, add user, and it does add me in. So we fall minus group 4, that is Chris's group. Okay, you've not yet pushed any code in up there, right, Chris's? Okay, I think the same is true of group 3. You have has anyone started creating a class diagram based off of your use cases, user stories? No? Okay. So let's see, one of the pieces which Stella was talking about was starting to add in your backlog items, which is your user stories, right? So all of you have user stories. So start putting them into your FIS print, and then you can use this board to assign those user stories to various members of your group. So that's one thing. The other is what I would like you to start working on is creating your project class diagram. And next class, we'll spend a little bit of time. I want to see what you're working on in terms of creating the class diagram. So for your project, I would like for you to do 2 things. One is to document your user stories using Visual Studio Team Services. And the second is, based off of your user stories, start your first class diagram and call it by the naming convention we are using. Call your solution Fall 2017 MIS group, whatever N. Is it MIS project? What did we use? Project or group?
I think she changed it after the career or something, and
Okay.
I've already created,
Okay.
I already used to set minus group 3.
Okay, that's fine. You can either use project group or just group and create the solution. So in which you'll have your class diagram. So those are the 2 things for your group. As far as the individual, what I would like to see is create your conference class, which has to do something very similar to the college class, which is you have to have what did we do in the college class. Yeah. You need to have the properties, the constructors, and then the populate method, connect it up to the database, and then do your test. Instead of a college test, you'll have to create another class called conference test and do the test. So beginning of the class, want to see you having running tests for populate college as well as populate conference. That's your check to see if you've understood whatever we have discussed or not. Okay, I'll stop here, work on this both individually and as a group, and we'll meet next Tuesday and discuss it. Okay. Yes.
We still can't find your number that surrender. But we can find the NA surrender, yes. you want me to add that one instead?
No, that has not worked as well, so if you just,
Okay.
and the,
Here's my name.
Yeah, there's some big stuff about it.
Oh, found it.
Okay. So,
Well, I found everyone, it just, no, not in the email.
okay, well, but, okay, so you added me, and it's interesting. I don't know why it's not allowing here.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'll answer this. Okay, so first the two of you can modify the yeah, then the two of you can work on it, and on Tuesday I'll see if I can manage it.
I can email you the link. Would you be able to?
I'm going to read that one now. It won't sound, unless I am authorized, it won't be able to. And the mix does not work previously, so I don't. You can add me in. They give you allow a maximum of 5. So since you're 2, even if you add both my accounts in, it's going to be fine. Okay, so I'll see you Tuesday.
Never did any.